In this example, we have two different even functions. One is called f of x, and one is called a of x. And remember, if they're even functions, if I plug in x, I get some value y, but if I plug in the opposite sign of x, I should get the exact same y value. So that works for both of these functions in black and in purple. I also have two odd functions. So if you remember, the odd functions work like the following. If I plug in the opposite sign of x, I should get the opposite sign of y. And that works for both of these, the blue one and the green odd function. So the first question is, if you add two even functions together, which we'll call h of x when you add them together, is your answer even, odd, or neither? So let's add two even functions. So the even functions are here in black and in purple. So if I add f of x plus a of x, when I add those together, is my answer even, odd, or neither? Well, if this is even, if I plug in negative x, which I'll modify the sign here, if I plug in negative x, I should get the exact same function that I started with. So let's see if that is true. So if I plug in negative x, f of negative x is the same thing as f of x, and then a of negative x is the same thing as a of x. So h of x, which is the sum, is the same thing as f of x plus a of x. Oops. Which is the same thing as plugging in a negative x, right? F of negative x plus a of negative x. So this is even. The next part is to add the two odd functions and see what you get. Do you get an even? Do you get an odd function, or neither? So when we add the two odd functions together, we'll call that k of x, the new function. So adding the two odd functions together, the odd functions are in blue and orange. So the original odd function is called g of x and then b of x. The rules there apply when you plug in a negative x. So if, for instance, we plug in negative x, if we get the exact same function, g of x plus b of x, then it would be even. So let's check. If I plug in negative x, so k of negative x would be g of negative x plus b of negative x. So g of negative x, right here, that's the same thing as negative g of x. And then b of negative x, right here, is the same thing as negative b of x. Since both of these have negatives, I could actually factor out the negative from both of these functions. So I would have a negative on the outside. So when I plugged in a negative x, I got the opposite of the original function. So in fact, that is not even, because if you plugged in negative x, you would get the exact same function. But if you get the opposite of the original function, that would be odd, right? Because if you plug in negative x, you get the opposite, right? The opposite sign of the original output.